Welcome to the Set to Lead podcast, the online mentoring platform for emerging and current leaders. My name is Marianne Samdi, leadership coach and talent development expert, and I will be your host.
Welcome back to the show, Dr. Goode.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being back.
Yes, I'm happy that you're here. Today's show is about diversity and inclusion. These two topics are at the forefront of popular news these days. I wanted to tap into your insights on some of the recent stories. The first incident up for discussion is the recent Starbucks incident. This is where two African American men were told to leave Starbucks while waiting for their business guests without even being given a rational reason. Do you think this was a situation related to unconscious bias?
Yes, I think more than likely it probably is. But you know what's more interesting and perhaps even more ironic that this is happening at Starbucks because the company has been at the forefront of progressive causes. For an example, this is the same company that launched not too long ago, Can We Talk About Race campaign, where they put Can We Talk About Race on customers' cups and encourage the customers to engage in a conversation about race with employees and other people at their restaurants. Starbucks is also known as a very same-sex marriage friendly company. For an example, its customers tend to say that they believe that Starbucks helps make society much better because they create a space where people of different races come to work and play in the same neighborhood or community. I think what is happening is by hitching itself to such a progressive image, Starbucks may be causing some of their customers to be more critical than they normally would be, because they want Starbucks actions to match its rhetoric. And when they don't, customers feel could be feeling a sense of betrayal.
So even when you're proactive, you can run into snafus. Yes.
Especially if, people don't believe that your actions match, some of your rhetoric and your marketing.
Right. So as these executives and department heads get their hands around diversity and inclusion, you have to always think about, are you really walking the talk?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't recall, I'm thinking about some of the meetings I've been in corporate America. We don't typically talk about, are we walking the talk? I don't typically hear that dialogue.
You're correct, but I will tell you that customers, shareholders, stakeholders are watching your every move, every move. And when your advertising and your marketing and your rhetoric and what you are portraying as your brand don't match up with your actions, they are going to they're going to hold you accountable for it.
What can executives learn from this whole Starbucks incident in addition to what you just mentioned? Is there anything else that they can do?
Yeah. I hope that Starbucks learn that bias, whether it be organizational level bias or individual leader bias, can have an impact on the company's brand and bottom line. For an example, the company recently released its quarterly earnings. And during that meeting, during that quarterly earnings call, Starbucks told Wall Street analysts that it would close all of its company-owned stores on May 29th for racial bias training. That's going to cost the company probably about $7 million in lost sales. And so, although Starbucks reported, solid results for the quarter, I would remind our guests that quarter ended for Starbucks on April 1, which was 2 weeks before the incident at the Philadelphia store, in which two black men were arrested as they, waited for a friend after a manager called police because they didn't buy anything. I suspect that the company will see a short-term impact on its sales as a result of the situation. I also believe that how the company is handling the issue will probably pay long-term dividends for Starbucks. And I base that on my professional opinion as I've evaluated how companies in the past have responded to this. And in my professional opinion, the company's response, which included apologies on the company's website and on Good Morning America, the CEO meeting with two victims 5 days later, the chain closing all the company stores or planning to close all the stores on May 29th for racial bias training. This is all textbook. And what I mean by textbook, this is exactly how I describe in my latest book, Crisis as a Platform for Social Change, from Strawberry Mansion to Silicon Valley. This is exactly how I laid out how a company should respond to this sort of a crisis. And so, I applaud Starbucks CEO who has vowed that the company will learn from the lessons from this ugly racial incident. And in my professional opinion, the company took the correct first step, underline the word first step, when the CEO, Kevin Johnson, acknowledged that all companies make mistakes, which they do. And, he's on record saying that, all great companies learn from their mistakes and improve. And that's exactly what I think is the first correct step for them to make.
Yeah. So it might seem like they're taking 2 steps back financially, right? But they're actually taking 5 steps forward in terms of change behavior.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's they're going to pay the what I would call the appropriate cost, both in temporary brand hit. They're going to take a temporary brand hit. They're going to take a $7 to $10 million loss in sales. But in the long run, I don't even think that's a loss. I think they should consider that an investment. And I think in the long term, Starbucks will be better off for it.
So, from action strategies or actionable tactics, what questions can a company ask itself if they want to verify if they are as inclusive as they claim? What are some assessment questions? Simple, 1 or 2 questions they should be asking themselves to do a pulse check.
Yeah. So inclusive companies can, if a customer or consumer or shareholder, a stakeholder is looking outside in this, or even if the CEO is looking inside the company, he should be looking to see if the company, employs a workforce that reflects clients, customers, and the communities they serve. Kevin Johnson should be, and other execs should be seeing, are we consistently and routinely training our employees about culture and language of our clients and our customers and the communities? Does our signage and literatures, is it in the customer's language that is consistent with cultural norms? What about our internal policies and procedures? Are they culturally sensitive? Do we leverage our cultural-based employee resource groups or business resource groups to help us be a better company? A few more questions they could be asking, and I'm sure Kevin Johnson and the Starbucks execs are asking themselves: are we practicing inclusive decision making and problem solving?
Decision making and problem solving. Love it.
Yeah. If that manager at that one store had been trained and had been told, hey, take a 3-second pause. What's the appropriate thing to do here? And here's the big one. When you make a mistake, if you're an inclusive company, you will recover quickly from cross-cultural collisions, and crises. And again, all of these things, I talk about, in the book, Crisis as a Platform for Change. Inclusive companies recover quickly from crises.
You brought up another great point here is this word. I love that word, consistency. So, Starbucks and probably many other companies, they can't stop at one training event, right? So you can shut down on May 29th and have some training, but that's not enough for sustainability. What are you going to do after that?
Right. And so all companies, and they should be doing this proactively, not in response to a crisis. If inclusive companies, have moved past just being aware of multicultural issues and diversity and inclusion, and they've moved on to action. For an example, the best companies routinely have crucial conversations and dialogues on implicit bias inside the company. And these sessions are not held and facilitated by HR or D&I. They're actually held by leaders in the company. And these dialogues are ongoing, they're frequent, they allow employees to practice the skills they need to create a workplace where all employees feel valued, respected, and included. And again, leaders, do this in what's called a World Cafe format. Participants are guided to listen to the thoughts and experiences of others. Then participants get to voice their own concerns and learn about cultural differences, all doing this in a safe environment, which encourages participants to speak up, listen, based on their own comfort level. A couple other things that you have to do. It can't be just one day of training, a half day of training. In order to make your workplace a trusting place to have complex and sometimes difficult conversations about race and bias, diversity and inclusion, you have to create a forum where employees feel comfortable reaching out to their fellow colleagues to gain greater awareness of each other's experiences and perspective. And of course, this all should be a first step should be conducting unbiased training so that employees can develop the skills to help minimize their blind spots around bias. If you do these things, trust me, you will end up being a healthier, more welcoming, a more inclusive organization. That's not to say individual leaders, individual workers, managers are not going to make a mistake here and there, but your shareholders and your customers, more importantly, your customers will know that's an anomaly and that's not, basically who your company is.
And you're saying that an HR leader or a diversity and inclusion leader doesn't have to facilitate these conversations.
Not if for an example, if I was talking to Kevin Johnson, I would say, okay, you're going to do this inclusive training, you're going to bring in these consultants, but make it a business issue, not an HR issue, not a diversity issue. Make sure your leaders understand that this is a leadership issue. And so leaders should be able to facilitate these conversations, at least initially. But once all employees are trained, an employee doesn't need to have doesn't have to wait for a facilitated World Cafe session. If the company is really a trusting and inclusive organization, at some point, employees will be able to seek out each other, their fellow employees, and say, help me understand, what happened in this situation with Starbucks. I'm seeing it this way, but tell me what I'm missing. And employees will be able to have that conversation with each other, knowing that the company is as safe a place to have that kind of conversation as the dinner room table. Right.
Those are some great tips. Dr. Goode, what I found very attractive is Rosalind Brewer, the COO of Starbucks, was quite visible in the whole Starbucks response to the incident. How important is having a diverse executive team in the pursuit of a diverse and inclusive workplace?
Oh, absolutely instrumental. I can't tell you how important it is. I know your question is about this crisis, but having women and people of color in senior leadership in organizations is critical for a number of reasons. Number one, they become mentors of other employees. They send a signal to both current employees and future employees that this is a place where you want to come to work, where you will have a future. Employees at various levels in the organization can look up and see that, there's a person like them, encouraging them, inspiring them, that this is a place to stick around, because I can see myself in that place. As it pertains to this particular crisis, having Rosalind Brewer, an African-American female representing Starbucks, at ground zero, as the chief operating officer, was instrumental in how the company responded to the situation. In my professional opinion, Starbucks handled the racial incident exceptionally well. And I believe that Rosalind Brewer specifically helped the company by bringing her perspective to bear on the situation. And I believe this resulted in the company seizing the moment proactively and immediately focusing on addressing the situation, improving customer experience, rather than equivocating or digging in to support the store manager or previous store policies. This is chapter one, out of the crisis playbook. And so a lot of again, I again applaud the CEO for first stepping out and acknowledging what happened, accepting responsibility, apologizing, assuring people it won't happen again. But then I'm sure the next thing he did was go right next door to Rosalind Brewer, his COO, and say, okay, how do we handle this? Take the lead on this. And I'm sure, she talked about meeting with the employees, with the victims that was in the situation, the two African-American males, shutting down the company to do the training. If not her specific recommendations, I know that I feel very confident that she, had her thumb on the scales, which resulted in the company taking, what I call a textbook response to the incident.
Well, as always, I enjoy speaking with you, Dr. Goode. I thought you shared some really great insights. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our show, but before we go, let the community know how they can follow your work.
Yeah, so I'm very active on LinkedIn. I would encourage your audience to connect with me on LinkedIn so we can continue this conversation. They also can follow me on Twitter at SJGoode. So very easy to follow. And I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Goode.
Thank you.